Hey everybody, this is Lisa Harper, and you're listening to the Not Ready Yet Curating Conversations for the Aging Journey podcast. This is the show that changes the conversations we have with our loved ones about aging and life decisions. Let's have more honest conversations where we speak the quiet parts out loud. Today I'm joined by Toni Moses, someone who has dedicated her career to standing beside those who've served our country. She is an unwavering advocate for veterans and a bridge builder between military service and meaningful opportunity. Toni has spent more than a decade serving veterans in pivotal roles. She began as a national service officer with the Disabled American Veterans, guiding veterans and their families through benefits, claims, and life-changing support. She then continued that mission as a Veteran Service Representative with the Department of Veterans Affairs, deepening her impact on the lives of those navigating the complex VA system. Since 2020, Toni has taken her advocacy into the business world as a relationship manager for the National Veteran Business Development Council. In this role, she helps connect veteran-owned businesses with corporate America, opening doors to procurement opportunities and championing economic empowerment for the veteran community. Toni's journey is rooted in service, fueled by purpose, and focused on ensuring that veterans have the resources, recognition, and the opportunities that they deserve. Toni, welcome to the podcast. Your knowledge is going to play such a critical role in helping our veterans and their families access the benefits they've earned. Could you start by telling us a little bit about your story and what led you to become essentially an advocate for veterans?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Miss Lisa. So I am a service disabled veteran. I was med-boarded out of the U.S. Navy. I came home, tried to reacclimate back into society, get a job. I ended up getting a very good job, but my disability ended up increasing in severity. And I had to eventually have a surgery. That surgery to correct it killed that career. So I found myself having to start over. I was homeless for 3 years, living back and forth with family members, which was a tough period. And I came across some information where I learned that because my disability had increased in severity, that I could reapply for education benefits through the VA. But this benefit also helped you with employment. So they gave me 3 years to go back and get my bachelor's, and that is how I got my job with Disabled American Veterans. There is where I learned a plethora of information, to include that my 3-year stint of homelessness was totally avoidable had I been aware and properly educated of how to navigate the VA benefit system. So that is when working with Disabled American Veterans became more than a job for me, because I was seeing it from every aspect. Just veterans everywhere who had no idea of how to access benefits, how to maximize those benefits, how to put those benefits in order to prepare for such a time as this, what your podcast talks about. So I know there are a lot of people in my age group who are taking care of parents who served during the Vietnam era, Korean War era, and they have no idea about benefits that's available to them as a caregiver and for the veteran that could make, of course, this journey is not easy, but it would take the pressure off, knowing that there's assistance out there that can help a veteran that served this country. So I'm excited to talk about that and, just provide some education and awareness about how to navigate the system, what benefits are available to caregiver of a veteran who is facing end of life.
A lot of my listeners are adult children supporting their aging parents or watching things change, right? But when you add the factor that your loved one served the country as well and is a veteran, something that you pointed out is the change in the bills that are passed and legislation that is not always making front page news. And people, if they're not constantly looking and searching for information, they need somebody like you in their corner that is on top of all of these changes.
The first thing I would say is, don't even try to navigate this process or find this information on your own. You can through va.gov. However, if you don't know what to look for, you're just going to end up being more frustrated and wasting time. The best absolute thing to do is to find a veteran service officer, not an attorney if you can help it. A veteran service officer through Disabled American Veterans. There is a Disabled American Veterans in every state, every county. Please go see one of them. They will take it from there, including filling out the paperwork for you, helping you put together a fully developed claim. What I mean when I say fully developed is that by the time the veteran representative on the VA side, Department of Veteran Affairs, receives your claim, they have everything that they need to support that claim. Marriage license, death certificate. So if we're not just talking about veterans here, I really want to touch on that. If you are taking care of your mother who is a surviving spouse of a veteran, those benefits that would have been entitled to the veteran, even if he never filed, will go to the surviving spouse. So that is very important to remember. But what the service officer will do is put together the package for you. They will give you a list of items needed, death certificate, marriage certificate, any supporting medical evidence. So this takes about 75% of the weight of trying to figure out what do you need to do, or back and forth correspondence between, if you did it on your own, between you and Department of Veteran Affairs. They're sending you a packet this thick to tell you basically in a nutshell, all I need is the death certificate. And by this time, a year's gone by. So that takes out a lot of unnecessary wasted time in communication. So, but then there's also these things here that Department of Veteran Affairs does. If your parent is 85 or older or has a terminal illness, Department of Veteran Affairs has an expediting process. So they will expedite that claim to get it done within 3 months. So that's another reason why you want to go to a service officer, because they will take care of all of that, filling out that paperwork, providing the supporting information to confirm that this veteran or surviving spouse is terminally ill, or they're over the age of 85. Could you please expedite this claim? It's very stressful when you're taking care of an elderly sick parent and you're trying to provide every resource available, but you still have things that you have to do, taking care of your family, going to work every day. So these are things that are not going to come to you or even know about. If your parent is in a nursing home or assisted living, the VA has benefits to cover those expenses as well. So it's a plethora of information. You may not know where to look or what you're reading. So this is why it's critical that you find your local veteran service officer through Disabled American Veterans.
Yep. And Toni, could you talk a little bit about the training they get? I think everybody should understand when they're talking to a veteran service officer what that equals.
Yes. Okay, so you do have other service organizations. You have American Legion, VFW, Marine Corps League. But when I worked for Disabled American Veterans, they trained us as if we were attorneys. And we also had anatomy and physiology courses. So you are trained in depth for 18 months. It's not just you learning how to fill out a claim form for someone. So it's just the level of expertise Disabled American Veterans have is bar none. And I'm not just saying that because I work there. But Disabled American Veterans, they believe in ensuring that there's no stress involved. When you go to them for help, you're not getting a form pushed in front of you and tell you to fill it out. They're doing it for you. So they're walking you through the process, holding your hand. It's a total different experience. So there's one in every state, one in every county. So all you would need to do is go to disabledamericanveterans.org to their regional office finder, and they will tell you each office that they have in that state.
Okay. You're representing them, which, if you're filling out the form, you're the expert. So if you have somebody on your behalf looking out for you in that way, I think a lot of the frustration is in the back and forth. So, I always say if we can get it right the first time, that's amazing. And it sounds like that's what you guys are built to do, is to help get it right the first time.
Correct.
Yeah,
Right.
that's amazing. So Toni, we're talking about some of this and it's going to be so specific for each family that there's no way in this, 30, 45-minute period that we're going to be talking that we're going to be able to touch upon everything or go into a lot of detail, right? But so as adult kids are hearing this, is there some what documentation should families be gathering now just to be prepared? Again, we'll get to some of the recent changes, things that we want people to know. But what are some of those documents that they should be gathering at home now?
The main thing would be the DD 214, which is the discharge paper for the veteran. However, I do want you to keep in mind that yesterday's VA is not today's VA. They have grown in leaps and bounds, and I'm talking about as early as 2011. 10 to 2012 is when they decided to make everything digital. So if there's an issue where you can't find the DD 214 or the veteran does, no longer knows where it is, it's not an issue. The VA now does everything electronically. They have direct access to National Archives. So essentially, when they put the veteran's social security number in, they'll generally get the DD 214. So what I'm saying is don't let that stop you from going to see a service officer or feeling like you can't file a claim because you don't have the discharge paper. The VA now, they have everything electronic. They not only will get access to that veteran's DD 214, but their personnel records, which is crucial when we're talking about the changes in legislation with the PACT Act. The VA's 2021, they added new locations for Agent Orange exposure, which is a game changer for a lot of Vietnam veterans who passed away from Agent Orange exposure conditions, but they may have filed a claim earlier and that claim was denied because they were stationed in an area where DOD and Department of Veteran Affairs did not recognize that as an exposure area. Case in point, had a surviving spouse. Her husband died in 2018 from one of the conditions on the Agent Orange list, really two. It was the prostate cancer and the ischemic heart disease, which is the coronary artery disease. He filed a claim and he kept the claim in through the appeals process. This claim for him had been going on for 10 years or more, right? But he eventually died with that claim still in the system. His wife had no idea that she can step in proxy for him and take over as the claimant. And so happened 2 years after he died, they added the location where he was, which was Guam. So when she went and filed her paperwork, I sent her to a service officer. She's in San Francisco, and she won that claim. And she got all those 10 years back.
Wow.
Yes. And now she gets her monthly benefits. Thank God she's in good health, but, it's bittersweet, of course, because the veteran's not here to enjoy it. But at least that's one less thing that her children have to worry about. And now, the law has changed. The spouse can get buried in the National Cemetery with the veteran. So that's another great benefit for children of veterans or surviving spouses. They have that benefit as well.
And are there other examples of something like that that's come up recently that families might really be shocked to learn if their father or something had been told no, they didn't qualify previously, but things have changed? What are some other examples of some recent changes and bills that have been passed that are going to affect these families?
So 2019, the Navy Vietnam veterans. So if they had blue water veterans and brown water veterans. So depending on which one you were not recognized for Agent Orange exposure in the waters of Vietnam until 2019. But what that did was all of the Navy veterans who had been filing claims for years before that, stating, hey, I have prostate cancer or I have lung cancer. I was in Vietnam, but at that time, the VA did not recognize the Navy veterans for being exposed unless they can prove that they stepped off the boat and had boots on the ground. But Congress finally realized, hey, the planes were flying above, spraying the Agent Orange. It was showering down on everything and everybody in that proximity, including Navy ships. But that bill did not get passed until 2019. So when you put that in perspective and you think of all of the Navy veterans who have passed away from those conditions on the Agent Orange list, and never got compensated, and their claims were denied, and they have surviving spouses here. This is life changing for people. I have an example of that. The local gas station that I frequent in every morning, I see a young man. I'll call him a young man. He had on his Navy Vietnam hat, and I said, "Hey, did you go back to the VA? Have you ever filed a claim for any of the Agent Orange conditions?" "Oh, I filed a claim years ago and they denied it. They said we're not eligible." And I said, "Well, they changed the law. You need to go back down there." And, this went on for 3 months. I started to feel like I was stalking them. But, I didn't care because, unfortunately, sometimes that's the only way that, a veteran will find out anything is if they run into another veteran that's willing to say, "Hey, listen, these things have changed. You need to go see about it." So eventually, I didn't see him for like 7 months, and I happened to go in the gas station and I saw him, and he was so excited, and he just grabbed me and he hugged me, and he was crying. And I said, "You went back?" He said, "Yeah, I finally went back." He said, "It took me a while because when you go through that process of continuously being denied, it kind of turns you off, and it just you don't want to do it again. Nobody wants to keep going through that." So he finally went back, and I sent him to Disabled American Veterans, and he didn't have to do anything. They just re-put the claim back in. But the great thing about it was he filed his claim in the early 90s, and they went back and gave him those benefits back to the first date of that claim. So that's part of that law.
Wow.
If the veteran was denied, they go back to the date of that claim. So
Wow.
he didn't even, he said, "I just happened to go to the bank to grab $20, and I go in there and my balance is over $200,000. He said that was life changing for my family. And I know it is.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that was during the time of COVID, when COVID first started. So, but it's things like that. I know we're focusing on the Vietnam era, but, truth be told, they're still adding things on the Gulf War list. Technically, we're still in the Gulf War. They have not been declared an end yet. So, August 1990 up until now is still the Gulf War. So you had Desert Shield, Desert Storm at the beginning, and then post 9/11 veterans are OIF, OEF, OND, just a bunch of theaters, but technically it's still the Gulf War. The thing with the burn pits, all of these, it's like 9 new rare respiratory cancers from breathing in that oil smoke when they were, the oil well fires, the burn pits. I'm trying to be politically correct, but burn pits, when you're out there overseas, it is where you're on burn duty of number twos and other stuff. This is part of your duty. You have to burn it, and sometimes you don't always have the proper respiratory gear on. That stuff causes a lot of medical issues, but they're still adding things on that list. They just did that list in 2021, and this was covering the very start of the Gulf War back in 1990. So you have a lot of veterans from that era that are my age that are severely ill because of those things. Glioblastoma, which is a horrible brain cancer. So you may have somebody in their 20s or 30s right now taking care of their 50-year-old something parent who served in the Gulf. And they have no idea that, that these laws have changed, and that whatever illness that their parent is fighting is a direct result of what they were exposed to in the Gulf, and that parent can get benefits, and then they can get benefits as the caretaker.
It's life-changing for some families to know this information. We're talking about wars, but then also here in the States, and actually the state I'm in North Carolina, for Camp Lejeune, Could you update us on what that equals if somebody was stationed there?
Yes. So that the Camp Lejeune issue. So the water was contaminated there from 1950 until 1987. They had a dry cleaning plant on the base. The solvents from the plant leached into the water. As a result, there is a list of over 15 cancers related to that exposure. So you tie that into a Vietnam Marine. Technically, they got hit twice. If they were deployed over to Vietnam and they were stationed at Camp Lejeune, they got hit by the water and the Agent Orange. And then, even past Vietnam, the window is 37 years. So 1950 to 1987. So if you're a Marine that served at Camp Lejeune, they have now decided to start compensating for those conditions, because for the longest, the benefit was if you ended up with any of those conditions from the Camp Lejeune water, treatment for it through the VA was free. 2017, Congress passed a bill to now they are actually compensated for those conditions. So that's a life changer.
We had talked about the surviving spouse earlier, and this stuck with me on kind of the detective work that I thought it was a good example of what happens during one of these claims process that you were mentioning that somebody had been dishonorably discharged. Is that a story that we could share here? There's no details to who. The best way we learn a lot of times is through stories, right?
There was a surviving spouse that had come to see me during my time at the Disabled American Veterans. She was denied for several years surviving spouse benefits through the VA. It was because of the character of discharge that her husband had received. He served in Vietnam. Unfortunately, he ended up getting a dishonorable. Now, during the time he served, there definitely was no such thing as PTSD. Well, they weren't recognizing it until really as early as post 9/11 veterans. That's when PTSD really started getting taken seriously. So from what I can see on his DD-214, he had a Purple Heart, a combat action badge. All of these things were clear indicators that he had been in direct combat. And for him to receive a dishonorable, for me, because of the kind of training that we received from Disabled American Veterans, I knew that was an indicator that there was some type of behavioral issue, which translated to today's PTSD. So I requested a copy of his personnel records and his medical records from active duty. And there it was, where he was, he went from a stellar Marine on his evals to, kind of tanking it, which is a clear indicator that there's something going on. In the records, you could see where he had been to the chaplain several times, discussing issues he was having with, after his first deployment, with sleep issues, sleep disturbances, and just anxiety. And then on the medical side of that, he was actually diagnosed with anxiety. However, fast forward 5-6 months later, they sent him back for a second tour. Now, in today's military, if you get diagnosed with PTSD, that's it. You are out, because, it's not good to send someone to multiple tours or deployments and they've been diagnosed with a mental health issue. So that was, kind of where they messed up. And they sent him back for a second tour. And this time when he went back, in order for him to cope, he started self-medicating. And the military's zero tolerance for drug abuse is zero tolerance. And that's how he ended up with the dishonorable. So I ended up writing a detailed brief of, clearly this was untreated, undiagnosed PTSD that the veteran actually confirmed before the second tour. And I think it's an injustice for him to have a dishonorable when he kind of set the record straight. He's telling you what these different things that he's going through, and he probably should not have been allowed to go back for a second tour to a combat zone. And as a result, the Department of the Navy sent her. Now, normally they'll just update the discharge, which they did. They updated it to general under honorable, which allowed her to be able to get her benefits now. But they also sent her a heartfelt letter, which is, you don't see a lot of. They were very apologetic that, number one, that he was not able to get his benefits due to that character discharge, because he ended up having like maybe 3 of the issues on the Agent Orange list, a couple of the cancers, diabetes, and the heart condition. And he was not able to get his benefits because of the character of discharge, which also excommunicated her from being able to get her benefits because of it. So, they sent her a beautiful letter, which I thought was awesome, because the recognition of, clearly this Marine was wronged. But those are, just it's the tip of the iceberg, because you still have a lot of people that's falling through the cracks who have no idea that these benefits, it's a plethora of benefits out here. The application process, the finding the information, all of that it's a very intimidating process. So it's important to know that, if you start with the service officer, that will take care of any issues of worry that you'll have with trying to navigate through the process. They're always available. They're located also in the local VA hospitals, the VA medical centers. They have service officers there. So there's always somebody there that can help. This is a very intimidating process. Just don't try to navigate it on your own. There may be, you may go in with one idea, and the service officer may see something else that you didn't even know was available. So, that's why it's a great idea to have the service officer do it, because they're not going to leave anything on the table.
Is there anything else you want to say on that topic, to just let families know that don't assume? There's been so many changes and updates to criteria. If you're open to it, it's time to revisit it, perhaps.
Absolutely. Yes. And the most important thing, the caveat to take from that is just let the service officer take care of it for you. That way you'll be sure no benefits will be left on the table. It's not just the monthly compensation. There's a benefit for what they call aid in attendance. So it's extra compensation to cover costs for in-home care.
Yeah.
So there are things, that the veteran could be eligible for, and the surviving spouse. That benefit is also available to the surviving spouse. So these are great benefits for children who are taking care of parents who may need extra assistance.
I want listeners to be taking away some of these bits of advice that we want every family that has a veteran in it to hear. Are there any myths or misconceptions you find yourself correcting?
Yes. A veteran may have gone to apply for benefits maybe 20 years or something ago, and whoever was assisting them, they may have only filed for non-service connected pension, where the veteran may have been actually entitled to service connected disability benefits, which is totally different. Non-service connected pension is an income-based benefit. It's equivalent to SSI, where they count any income in the household towards that benefit. So if you're over a certain threshold, you won't get that benefit. But service-connected disability, that is tax exempt, and it's not an income-based benefit, which the veteran will get to keep all of that, which is, it may not be much, but if you are trying to assist your parents, and what if you can't be there all the time because you have to work, but you want to pay for someone to be there with that parent, that is what that benefit will cover. So it may not be much to somebody else, but it will mean a lot to someone who's trying to get every resource possible to assist with taking care of their elderly parent and making it comfortable for them.
Yeah. Do you have anything else that you'd like to share?
The most important out of all of this is don't do it on your own. There are service organizations out there that will help you step by step. I mentioned the other ones, but I'm sorry, Disabled American Veterans, they just, because that's part of their mission, is to make sure that not only the veteran, but their family, that veteran's family, is receiving the benefits that they're supposed to receive. So if you don't know where to start there. Disabled American Veterans.
They are trained to do this. Let them take care of it and guide you and be that advocate for you and offer the support that you need at this time. So, well, Toni, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today. I think this is, like I say, I think this conversation is going to be a good starting point for a lot of families out there that may have been told no a lot and they are frustrated, and that's understandable. But hopefully this gives them encourages them to do some research, look into some of these recent changes and see if it does affect them.
I hope so. I hope I've been a great help and a blessing to the families out here. And I'll just say, as an only child, to anyone who's out there taking care of their parents, thank you, because it is a thankless job. A great person, a great human being for doing so. So thank you, and I hope I was able to help. And thank you for having me, Miss Lisa.
You are so welcome, Toni. It was a pleasure. And again, thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for joining me on Not Ready Yet, Curating Conversations for the Aging Journey. If something in this episode gave you clarity or the courage to start an important conversation, or offered a new way to look at things, I hope you'll share it with someone who might need the same encouragement. Remember, navigating aging isn't something we have to do alone or in crisis. With love, logic, and the right tools, we can face what's next with confidence and connection. Be sure to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling generous, leave a review. It helps others find the show. And just a quick note, the information shared on this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for medical, psychiatric, legal, or other professional advice. Always consult a qualified professional for guidance tailored to your unique situation. This is Lisa Harper, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.